From the dim memories of a distant past, there is a ghostly story about Ethan, a young man who mysteriously died in a quiet forest in an American suburb. Ethan was once an ambitious young man, passionate about adventures and discoveries. One day, he decided to go on a camping trip alone into the deep forest to challenge himself. But no one knew that was the last time they saw Ethan. When night falls, the atmosphere in the forest becomes cold and haunting. Strange noises occasionally rang out in the quiet space, but Ethan did not know that he had entered a ghostly territory. A terrible event happened, causing Ethan to lose his life inexplicably, and his soul could not escape. From then on, Ethan became a sleepless ghost, lurking in the darkness of the forest, and began a journey to find someone to replace him. Ethan was haunted by a curse that only if someone else died in his place in this forest, his soul would be freed. So he begins to hunt down overnight campers, hoping to find someone to take his place. Rumors about ghosts in the forest spread throughout the region, making many people afraid to come near. But for the curious, and those who do not believe in the supernatural, this forest becomes an ideal destination to test their courage. On a summer night, a camping group of 5 friends, Jake, Olivia, Mia, Leo, and Zoe, decide to explore the woods famous for the legend of Ethan's undead soul. They came to the forest with a spirit of adventure and curiosity, unaware that they were about to face a night of terror. Before they set out, the locals warned them about legends and mysterious incidents happening in the forest, but they just considered them fairy tales. As the last sunlight of the day fades behind the mountain peaks, a group of friends, Jake, Olivia, Mia, Leo, and Zoe, complete their long trip to the mysterious forest. They chose a camping site located on a flat grassy area next to a clear stream. The scenery around them was peaceful with the sound of birds chirping and leaves rustling in the wind. As darkness began to spread, they began to set up tents. Jake, optimistic and energetic, joked as he helped everyone assemble the tent frame. Olivia, with her organizational and thoughtful skills, assigns everyone small tasks. Mia, gentle and nature-loving, prepares food for dinner, while Leo and Zoe, best friends, prepare the firewood for the night's campfire. Laughter and smiles still echoed in the air as they gathered around the campfire. They toasted marshmallows and shared stories about life and dreams. As the sky gradually turned from blue to a deep black, Jake began to tell the legend of the forest, about the soul of Ethan, the unfortunate boy who lost his life here. The campfire light reflected on each person's face, creating ghostly shadows on their faces. Some laughed, dismissing the legend as just a fairy tale, while others, like Mia, became pensive, feeling there was something strange and inexplicable in the air. Although neither of them would admit it, an uneasy feeling began to creep into each of their minds as they prepared for a long night in the forest. The chirping of insects and the gurgling of streams seemed to grow louder, menacing in the darkness around them. When night completely fell and the moonlight sparkled on the treetops, they had no idea that Jake's mysterious story was not just an ancient legend, but a terrifying prediction of what was to come. After a cozy dinner by the campfire, a thick night covers the forest. The familiar noises during the day now become creepy and mysterious under the moonlight. The group of friends sat around, but the happy atmosphere gradually subsided, replaced by suspicious silence. Mia, the most sensitive person in the group, first felt that something was wrong. She heard heavy footsteps from behind the nearby trees. Everyone initially thought it might be a wild animal, but Mia couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling in her heart. Jake, always up for a challenge, grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate. He boldly stepped into the darkness, moving towards the source of the sound, while the others watched him from afar, their hearts beating loudly in their chests. Moments later, a strange rattling sound rang out, and then there was eerie silence. Jake did not return, and the group's calls seemed to be swallowed up by the thick darkness of the forest. Jake's mysterious disappearance makes the atmosphere tense and full of fear. Olivia, who always remained calm, tried to calm everyone down, but anxiety quickly spread. They decided to stay in the tent, hoping that Jake was simply lost and would return soon. But night brings more than just silence. Strange noises began to echo around them, from broken tree branches to unintelligible whispers. the group of friends begins to realize that maybe the legend of Ethan, the bad boy, is not just a fairy tale. Mia, despite the pain and fear, cannot sleep. She looked out through the opening of the tent only to see dark shadows moving erratically among the trees. The group begins to feel that they are no longer alone in this forest. A terrifying feeling surrounded them, as if they were being hunted by an incomprehensible and terrifying force. The night passed in fear and confusion, with strange sounds still haunting them from the darkness, and Ethan's ghost, it seemed, lurking, ready to strike at any moment. The atmosphere of anxiety and fear became thick when they realized Jake still hadn't returned. Olivia, with her survival skills and leadership mindset, proposes a plan for them to leave the forest. Carefully and slowly, they cleared camp and packed their belongings, but the air was still heavy with Jake's disappearance. As they began to move, an unexpected event occurred. Mia suddenly cried out in pain. She had stepped on a trap cleverly hidden under dry leaves. The trap clamped down on her leg, making it impossible for her to move, and blood began to flow. Zoe, Olivia, and Leo tried to free Mia from the trap. This took some time, and people began to realize that the forest might not be as safe as they thought. Zoe, who always remains optimistic, tries to maintain the group's morale, but an atmosphere of anxiety and despair prevails. Olivia decides they can't travel far with Mia's condition. They return to camp, where Mia can be taken care of. The group begins to feel that they not only have to face the darkness and terrifying silence of the forest, but also a cunning and ruthless predator. Meanwhile, strange noises in the forest seem to be getting closer and closer, making everyone constantly observe their surroundings. They begin to feel like prey being hunted in a game whose rules they do not understand. Olivia tried to keep her fighting spirit, but fear and despair began to show on everyone's faces. They begin to understand that to survive, they will have to fight not only the darkness and mysteries of the forest, but also face their deepest fears. As darkness covers the forest, Olivia, Mia, Leo, and Zoe face a difficult decision. They understand that staying in one place will only increase the risk of being hunted by ghosts, but Mia still cannot move. During the urgent situation, Leo and Zoe decided to separate to seek help, despite knowing that this was extremely risky. Flashlights in hand, they weaved through bushes and small ridges, heading in what they thought was the direction out of the forest. Both felt that every darkness contained danger, and that the slightest noise was enough to startle them. They try to keep in touch with each other, but every step takes them further apart. In an unguarded moment, when Leo stopped to check the map, a tall figure appeared from behind and attacked him unexpectedly. Zoe, when she turned around, was just in time to see Leo disappear into the darkness. She stood there dumbfounded for a few seconds before running away in panic, not knowing where to go, only knowing that she needed to get out of this place. Meanwhile, at camp, Olivia and Mia feel the situation becoming more dire. Mia, despite the pain, tried to keep her spirits up, while Olivia kept thinking about an escape plan. She knew that they needed to leave here immediately, but didn't know what to do when Mia couldn't go. As darkness covers the forest, Olivia, Mia, Leo, and Zoe face a difficult decision. They understand that staying in one place will only increase the risk of being hunted by ghosts, but Mia still cannot move. During the urgent situation, Leo and Zoe decided to separate to seek help, despite knowing that this was extremely risky. Flashlights in hand, they weaved through bushes and small ridges, heading in what they thought was the direction out of the forest. Both felt that every darkness contained danger, and that the slightest noise was enough to startle them. They try to keep in touch with each other, but every step takes them further apart. In an unguarded moment, when Leo stopped to check the map, a tall figure appeared from behind and attacked him unexpectedly. Zoe, when she turned around, was just in time to see Leo disappear into the darkness. She stood there dumbfounded for a few seconds before running away in panic, not knowing where to go, only knowing that she needed to get out of this place. Meanwhile, at camp, Olivia and Mia feel the situation becoming more dire. Mia, despite the pain, tried to keep her spirits up, while Olivia kept thinking about an escape plan. She knew that they needed to leave here immediately, but didn't know what to do when Mia couldn't go. The group of friends, now only 2 people left, began to feel surrounded by despair. They learn that they are trapped in a true nightmare, where the darkness holds not only Ethan's ghost, but also their own fear and despair. As the night deepened, the strange noises from the forest became more terrifying, as if everything around them was watching and hunting them. Olivia and Mia hugged each other tightly, trying to find some comfort in a situation with no way out. They understand that to survive this night, they will have to overcome their greatest fear. As dawn began to break through the leaves, Olivia and Mia, now exhausted of strength and spirit, decided to venture out of camp. Olivia took it upon herself to create a simple stretcher from a coat and a tree branch to pull Mia. They walked slowly and carefully through the forest, amid the gradually fading darkness. The morning air has a mysterious feeling, but at the same time evokes a glimmer of hope. They continued walking, even though each step was painful and heavy. The two stopped occasionally to rest and listen, fearing that any noise might signal a new danger. After several hours of weary plodding, they began to recognize familiar signs of the route they had taken upon arrival. Joy mixed with relief gradually appeared on their faces. Finally, they found a trail that, although faint, led them out of the forest. As they walked out of the forest, sunlight and birdsong echoed as a welcome back from another world. They collapsed from exhaustion as soon as they stepped out of the shade of the trees, but their hearts were filled with joy and relief when they escaped the nightmare. Their return is mysterious and inexplicable to the police and locals. The story of terrifying nights in the woods and the disappearance of Jake, Zoe, and Leo becomes a mystery. The police organized a search but did not find any trace of them. The forest becomes a mysterious and scary place, with the legend of Ethan's ghost making it even more creepy. The locals began to stay away from the forest, and the story of the group of friends became a legend told and retold in evenings around the campfire as a reminder of the mysterious and wise power of the forest. Measure of nature. When night falls, Maple Street becomes eerily quiet. But beneath the surface of this calm, a terrifying mystery is lurking. The story begins with rumors about the mysterious disappearance of Mary, a young woman from the town. It's said that she vanished without a trace on a full moon night while strolling down Maple Street. Since then, on every full moon, the silhouette of a woman can be seen wandering the street. The ancient houses along Maple Street now seem gloomy and mysterious. Windows are tightly shut, leaving only small gaps for the moonlight to sneak through, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Unusual noises frequently emanate from these houses, as if they're gasping for breath. Town residents start whispering about the Maple Street legend, that the street is cursed by a supernatural force. Some believe it's Mary's spirit seeking justice, while others think something darker and more terrifying lies behind those old walls. On a fateful evening, John, a young journalist from the city, decides to move into the last house on Maple Street. He comes with the purpose of uncovering the truth behind the rumors and mysteries of the street. Unaware, John is about to embark on a perilous and mysterious adventure. On his first night, John feels the chilly and tense atmosphere engulfing the old house. The creaking of the old floorboards, the howling wind through the cracks, and the dense darkness outside the window create an eerie atmosphere that sends shivers down his spine. The house John has chosen is an ancient architectural structure, with worn brick walls, towering windows, and ancient wooden doors. From the outside, the house exudes a quaint beauty, but also an ominous and mysterious air. As John enters the house, he immediately senses a cold aura, as if the house is alive and aware of his presence. The creaking from the old floors, the howling wind through the cracks, and the dense darkness outside the window create a chilling atmosphere. While cleaning and arranging his things, John discovers a secret door leading to the basement, hidden under an old rug. In the basement, he finds boxes of old books and several peculiar objects that seem untouched for ages. John's first night in the house is sleepless. He spends time walking through the house, feeling its ominous silence. In the darkness, he starts to hear strange sounds. Footsteps on the upper floor, the creaking of old doors, and even incomprehensible whispers. That night, John decides to research the history of Maple Street. He starts reading the old books found in the basement and discovers that years ago, Maple Street was the site of strange, unexplained events, including Mary's mysterious disappearance. In the quiet space of the old house at the end of Maple Street, John gradually discovers strange and terrifying phenomena that defy explanation. Every night as moonlight peers through the window cracks, a shapeless black shadow begins to appear in John's room. It's not the shadow of any object in the room. It moves, expands, and contracts as if it has its own consciousness. Nights in the old house are full of unusual noises. Footsteps on the upper floor, the creaking of ancient wooden doors, and especially the incomprehensible whispers echoing from the walls make the atmosphere tense, raising John's suspicions of a mysterious entity's presence. To clarify these phenomena, John equips himself with a camera and recording devices. He spends nights monitoring and recording everything from strange shadows to creepy sounds. He also searches for information in old books and records about the house and Maple Street, hoping to find clues. One night, while observing the dark room, John suddenly spots a vague figure slowly materializing. The figure is tall, moving slowly, and seems to be looking straight at him. The most terrifying thing is the two bright red eyes, like burning flames, intensely focused on John, making him feel an overwhelming pressure and immobility. In his panic, John still manages to capture the image. When the camera's flash lights up, the mysterious entity suddenly disappears, leaving behind a thin trail of black smoke. Later, when checking the recording, he discovers a series of unintelligible whispers, as if trying to convey a message. Night falls on Maple Street, and the full bright moon shines through the dropping leaves. John, with a heart full of doubt and curiosity, decides to investigate the origin of the mysterious shadow. He puts on his coat, takes a flashlight, and starts his solitary journey into the night. John walks down the street, each step echoing on the dry leaves, creating a somber and tense melody. He feels as if someone or something is watching him from the ancient walls of the old houses. As he goes deeper into the street, whispers start to sound. Initially, they are faint, like the wind blowing through leaves, but gradually become clearer. Incomprehensible words echoing from the darkness. At the end of the street, John sees a faint light from an old grave in the cemetery. He takes a deep breath and steps in. In the darkness, the ancient tombstones seem to whisper forgotten secrets. Approaching the grave, John sees a slender figure standing there, bathed in moonlight. It's Mary, with long hair and an old dress, looking as though she's still alive. She turns around, and her eyes are filled with sadness and profound understanding. Mary tells John about the night of her disappearance, about ancient rituals and a mysterious cult. She speaks with emotion and a faraway look in her eyes, as if reliving those terrifying memories. As Mary tells her story, the darkness around them starts to move, as if something is lurking, waiting. Mary explains that since she got trapped between two worlds, she realized she's not the only victim, and that the cult continues its rituals. As the story ends, Mary disappears into the darkness, leaving John with many questions and a strong determination to do something to prevent further horrific events. After the mysterious encounter with Mary, John returns home with a mind full of turmoil. He decides to delve deeper into the history of Maple Street and the ancient cult Mary mentioned. That night, he opens his old journal and starts writing. John finds several old books and archives at the local library describing a secret ancient cult. He discovers that this cult has existed for centuries, with strange rituals and beliefs, including the worship of spiritual entities they believe to be sources of immense power. In his research, John comes across a recurring symbol in the documents, a spiral with 3 interlocking circles. He realizes this symbol also appears in his dreams and on some of the old walls in his house. While John is engrossed in his research, his phone suddenly rings. A raspy voice, indistinctly male or female, tells him about an upcoming meeting of the cult and warns him of the dangers if he continues his investigation. The voice disappears after a sinister laugh. After the phone call, John feels uneasy. He realizes that the darkness around his house seems to stir, as if something is moving in the shadows. He begins to feel like he's being watched. As John prepares to sleep, he finds a letter with no apparent source under the door. The letter contains an invitation to attend the cult's upcoming meeting and a chilling warning. Your choice will determine your fate. John, with strong determination and a desire to find the truth, decides to attend this meeting, despite the risks. He knows this might be his only chance to uncover the truth about Mary and the mysterious cult. The night of the meeting arrives, and John, equipped with a powerful flashlight and a small dagger under his coat, steps into the misty, dark night, heading to the rendezvous location written in the mysterious letter. John finds a discreet entrance, hidden behind an ancient stone wall at the town's edge. He gently pushes the door, entering a dark corridor leading underground. The air is damp, and the smell of strange herbs and essential oils fills the space. As he goes deeper into the corridor, John starts to hear indistinct whispers coming from nowhere. The light from his flashlight reflects moving shadows on the walls, as if they're alive and watching his every step. Finally, John arrives at a large room where dim light from burning candles flickers. The room is decorated with mysterious symbols and has an altar at the center. Around the altar are cult members, wearing black robes and lion and goat masks. John hides in the shadows, watching the cult leader begin the ritual. A new chosen one, a young girl, is brought before the altar. Other cult members start chanting incomprehensible prayers and performing complex gestures. As the ritual proceeds, John witnesses strange and terrifying phenomena. From the altar, black smoke begins to rise, forming the shapes of tormented faces. Moans and screams echo from the walls, making the atmosphere even heavier and more horrifying. When the ritual reaches its climax, John decides to act. He rushes out of the shadows, heading for the altar with the intention to rescue the girl and stop the ritual. A fight ensues between John and the cult members. Each of John's movements is precise and decisive, but he's outnumbered by the opponents. As John emerges from the shadows, he faces the cult members, dressed in black robes and wearing terrifying masks. Their eyes, peering out from behind the masks, reflect a madness and devotion. John quickly overpowers one of the nearest cult members with a strong punch. He jumps up, dodging an attack from behind, and uses his dagger to fight back. Each of his moves is calculated, reflecting self-defense skills he had learned in the past. The space inside the ritual room becomes chaotic. Shouts, the clashing of metal, and the screams of the injured resound incessantly. The light from the candles flickers, casting dancing shadows on the walls, making the scene even more ominous and mystical. One of the cult members, a large man with a goat mask, starts chanting prayers in a sinister tone. From his hands, dark energy beams start to emerge, aiming directly at John. John agilely dodges the mysterious energy streams. When John seems overwhelmed, Mary appears like a ghost, her eyes filled with determination and power. She emits a blinding light, stunning the cult members, giving John a chance to continue fighting. The battle reaches its climax as John faces the cult leader. They struggle fiercely, with each strike powerful and precise. With Mary's support, John finally defeats the leader, destroys the altar, and ends the ritual. As the altar is destroyed, a blinding light suddenly erupts, engulfing the room. John loses consciousness and, when he wakes up, finds himself lying on the grass outside, under a clear sky. The girl has been rescued, and Mary has now vanished without a trace. But the story is not over yet. John knows he needs to uncover the dark secret behind Maple Street and the true origin of the cult. John returns to the old house where he first met Mary. In a secret room Mary showed him, John finds a series of ancient documents, including cult diaries and ritual books. As John immerses himself in research, he feels the presence of an unseen entity. Strange noises start to sound around him, and the darkness seems to move, as if alive. John realizes he's not alone in the old house. The documents reveal a terrifying truth. The cult used to perform sacrificial rituals to summon supernatural entities to control and use their power. But something went wrong, and a dark entity got trapped in Maple Street, spreading terror among the residents. The documents reveal a terrifying truth. The cult used to perform sacrificial rituals to summon supernatural entities to control and use their power. But something went wrong, and a dark entity got trapped in Maple Street, spreading terror among the residents. As John tries to process the newfound information, the dark entity appears, enveloping the room in a terrifying shadow. John confronts it, using knowledge from the ancient documents to fight. A spiritual battle begins, with John using all his understanding to repel the entity. During the battle, John realizes that not only strength and knowledge can help him win, but also courage and bravery. He calls the entity's name, using ancient curses he learned, forcing it to return to its world. As the entity disappears, the old house returns to normal, and sunlight starts shining through the windows. John, exhausted but relieved, realizes he has freed Maple Street from a centuries-old curse. He steps out of the house, knowing he has forever changed the town's history. After resolving the mystery and defeating the dark entity, John steps out of the old house, watching the sunrise over Maple Street. The sunlight illuminates everything, revealing the peaceful beauty long overshadowed by the darkness of the curse. As John walks down the street, he notices that everything seems to have changed. The old walls that were once gloomy now shine brightly and colorfully. The laughter of children echoes from houses that were once filled with silence and gloom. The residents of Maple Street, who once lived in fear and superstition, now come out of their houses, greeting a new day with smiles and hope. They approach John, grateful for freeing them from the horrific haunting that lasted generations. John decides to keep the truth about what really happened a secret. He writes an article about the miraculous change in Maple Street, leaving out details about the cult, the rituals, and the battle with the dark entity. He knows some secrets are best kept hidden. Finally, John decides to stay in Maple Street. He opens a small office to continue his writing work, becoming part of the community. Every day, he spends time walking down the street, admiring new life sprouting from corners once haunted by darkness. As the story closes, John sits on his balcony, gazing at the vast sky. He wonders if there are more secrets to uncover, if there are more challenges waiting for him in the future. The story of Maple Street has ended, but John's story continues. That night, the dense darkness enveloped the fields and dense forests along the secluded road where a man was driving his old truck. The headlights flickered through the thin mist, casting bizarre shadows on the ground. Tired from a long day, he just wanted to get home quickly, but fate seemed to have a different plan for him. In the darkness, suddenly, through the dim light of the headlights, he saw a vague figure, a young girl hurrying across the road. His heart seemed to stop the moment he realized he couldn't stop the truck in time. A horrific crashing sound echoed. The noise of the girl's body hitting the vehicle created an unforgettable sound in the still night. He stopped the truck immediately, but then, in a moment of panic, He was haunted by the ghastly imagination of the consequences. Fearful and confused, he decided to ignore his conscience, stepped on the gas, and fled the accident scene, leaving behind a haunting scene. Glancing in the rearview mirror, the dim moonlight cast over the girl's motionless figure beneath the dense fog, creating an eerie, ghostly scene. The light, reflecting in the mirror, transformed it into a bizarre, more haunting vision. Under the moonlight, the girl's body was no longer normal, but appeared twisted, dark, emanating a cold, threatening aura. The scene, like a black and white Gothic painting, dark and haunting, etched deeply in his mind. The girl's figure seemed to still be moving unnaturally, as if her soul refused to rest, struggling in the realm of death. He felt the cold spreading from that image, as if the girl's death was rooting itself in the surrounding space, freezing the air. In his heart, the fear came not only from legal consequences, but also from a deep understanding that he had lost a part of his soul in that horrific moment. As the headlights swept past, the girl's image became blurred and distorted, as if reproaching him from the afterlife. This terror prevented him from looking back, pushing him into despair and obsession, a state that constantly reminded him of the fateful event he had created. But this was just the beginning of an endless haunting. The horrifying scene of that night began to pursue him, not only in sleep, but in every conscious moment. He was haunted by the girl's painful screams, her empty gaze, and her pained expression, turning his life into an endless nightmare with no escape. After that disastrous night, the man embarked on an endless journey on secluded roads, where loneliness and silence now became frightening and suffocating. No longer a refuge, the roads seemed to be a stage for horrifying scenes from the netherworld. Each night, as the moonlight peeked through the truck window, the image of the young girl with her empty gaze and pained face, like a deep, hidden wound, began to appear in his dreams. The girl, no longer a living image, became a resentful spirit from the other world, appearing in each dream, replaying incessantly. In each dream, the scene became increasingly horrifying. The girl slowly approached him, her steps light yet heavy with resentment. Her eyes were no longer those of a living person, but two deep, dark pits, as if wanting to pull him into a world of pain and despair. Her lips whispered indistinct words, full of pain and reproach, echoing in his mind like an inescapable sentence. Each time he woke up, the image of the girl haunted him, like a persistent ghost, preventing him from forgetting her wrongful death. The darkness of his dreams overshadowed his real life, making each trip a journey through fear and obsession. He could no longer find peace on the lonely roads, only the relentless pain of a tormented conscience. Day after day, the man felt the girl's presence not only in his dreams, but also in real life. As he drove down the lonely roads, he felt her eyes following him from the shadows. Unusual gusts of wind through the truck windows made him shudder, as if they carried the girl's cold breath. Sometimes, the engine noise seemed to turn into moaning, as if reflecting the pain of the restless soul. But it didn't stop there. Strange incidents began to occur, increasing his confusion and fear. The truck started to have unexplainable malfunctions. The headlights suddenly went out mid-journey. The steering system became stiff and difficult, making him feel like an invisible hand was trying to control the truck. Once, the radio suddenly emitted wordless moans, startling him into looking back, only to see emptiness behind. The peak of fear came when he saw the girl's image reflected in the rearview mirror. It seemed she was sitting silently in the back seat, staring at him through the glass. In those moments, the air in the truck became uncomfortably cold, and he felt trapped in a space full of haunting and resentment. This obsession gradually took over his life. He became sleepless, unfocused at work, and started to become irritable and despondent. Every time he looked in the mirror, he feared seeing the girl's image, and every unusual noise made him imagine the worst. His life became a never-ending series of days in fear and despair. Finally, unable to bear the pressure of his conscience and the continuous nightmares, The man decided to return to the scene of the accident, where he had caused an irreversible tragedy. In his mind, he hoped this act would free him from the obsession and, at the same time, appease the unfortunate girl's spirit. That night, with a bouquet of white flowers in hand, he returned to where it all happened. The atmosphere was cold and gloomy, vastly different from his memories. He laid the flowers at the spot where the girl had lain motionless, tears streaming down his face, tears of regret and despair. But when he looked up, he saw a sight that froze his blood. The girl stood there not far away, in a terrible and frightening form. The moonlight revealed her face, but it was no longer gentle and innocent as he had imagined. Instead, her face was distorted, her eyes no longer saw the light, and her mouth was wide in a smile full of hatred and pain. The girl's eyes burned fiercely, staring intently at the man, as if wanting to penetrate his soul. In the darkness, she began to approach closer, her steps light but haunting. Each of her steps echoed like a resonance from the other world, each step increasing the tense and fearful atmosphere. The man couldn't move, as if tied down by her resentful gaze. He felt a cold wind blowing through, the air suddenly becoming suffocating and pressurized. The girl opened her mouth, and from it came a scream full of hatred and pain, echoing through the space, vibrating every cell in his body. In that moment, the man realized that some sins cannot be forgiven, and some ghosts never find peace. He faced the consequences of the fateful decision he had made, a horrifying lesson about selfishness and the consequences of running away from responsibility.